I'm about community, learning, discussion, respect, integrity, truth, science, and discovery. Welcome to My Paranormal Soapbox. Hello, and welcome to another episode of My Paranormal Soapbox. I am your friendly neighborhood ghost hunter, Justin Brown, here to stand up on a soapbox once again and talk about the topics that we all love and enjoy in the paranormal. And tonight, we're going to talk about the psychic phenomena. We had a poll on the blog page, and the psychic phenomena one got the most votes. So your voice has been heard. We will continue to do that poll. I can only do a 2-question poll, unfortunately. So if you have any suggestions for what topic you would like me to talk about on this show, please message me. Say it in the comments. I'll write it down. I'll have Jessica help me remember it. I'll have my team members that are watching help me remember it, and we'll get it on the poll so you guys can all vote on it in the community. I see you guys all saying hi in the comments. Hi Sandy, hi Bill, hi Michelle. What's up, Derek? Tony, nice to see you in here. Thanks for tuning in. Please guys, share this video, get it out there. Not only am I trying to educate and let you guys know what I feel and think about the paranormal, I want to know what you guys think. I want you to bounce back with your comments and your questions. I want to learn from you just as much as I want to teach you and express my opinion. I want you to express your opinion as well. So, before we get into the psychic phenomena, we will go over to the guest screen and say hi to Jessica Bias, who will be moderating the comments in the chat this evening. Hello.
Hi, Justin. How are you?
I'm okay this evening. I'm ready to discuss the topic, and I'm ready to see what everybody thinks. This topic is very complex and very intriguing. A lot of people might assume that I'm not going to pick it apart, but hopefully they are surprised about what I have to say about it. But I am going to look at it from both sides. So I know you're interested in this topic as well, so I'm glad to have you.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. It will be fun.
All right. Well, if you have any comments or questions, I will check back with Jess here in a few moments, and we will get to them, and we will do all the shout-outs if anybody else comes into the chat. So I will get back to you, Jess.
Sounds good.
All right, guys. The psychic phenomenon. All right. It's been around since the dawn of the paranormal age. Okay. It's probably the first thing that's been in our culture for, millennia. Let's just say that. Okay. I'm not going to research and assume to know that I know when, the psychic phenomena came to exist in the human culture, but it's been around for a minute. Okay. Different tribal cultures and communities have used elements of the psychic phenomena in their religion and their, way of life and their culture. Okay. It's a part of our culture that tends to, let's say, believe or assume that we have a destiny. And not only do we have a destiny, that we have senses that surround our outside, normal senses, okay? Extra senses, or maybe a third eye, okay? The psychic phenomena assumes and believes that there is a spiritual realm, okay? So, with all that being said, we're going to try to break down what the psychic phenomena is according to me in my research. I'm going to go over the definitions of those briefly and short and sweet and to the point, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit, and then I want you to fire back at me what you think, even if it's a really cool experience you had, or if you have an opinion or question about it. Let's see those get into the comments. So let's get over to this screen. Okay, we're going to talk about 6 different types of psychic phenomena. There could be more. Okay, there's many subsets, but firstly, we're going to talk about telekinesis and psychokinesis. For short, I like to say PK. So, what is PK? It's an alleged psychic ability allowing a person to influence a physical system without physical interaction. Okay, what does this mean? Okay, this can mean a lot of things. All right. So I don't assume to be an authority on the subject matter. What I say does not mean that someone's wrong about what their definition of these subjects are and topics are. So with that being said, just hear me out. Okay. Psychokinesis is how to influence physical matter in your physical environment using the power of your mind. Okay? For lack of a better understanding or another way to say it, you're using your mind to influence physical systems. It could be moving a pencil on a table, it could be, you know, poltergeist activity, it could be levitating something or yourself off the ground, it could be, manifesting something physical like water flying out of the air. It could be, even some, teachings and readings about parapsychology rather suggest that psychokinesis is responsible for some types of manifestations. Okay. And when we get into that, that can be really, really interesting and fascinating. But that is what the definition is before we get too deep down the rabbit hole about that. Okay. So the second one we're going to talk about this evening is animal empathy. All right. Animal empaths is an animal empath is considered a person with an exceptional ability to recognize and understand the emotions and mental state of an animal to such a degree as to be able to then interact with the animal and or positively influence its behavior in a positive way. Okay. One of the best examples um, that I can think of recently is the Kevin Richards guy. He is the one who goes out and lives with the lions, and they can be wild. He incorporates himself into a pride and doesn't die. Okay, he doesn't become their food. And what's fascinating about these people, they can be the horse whisperers, cat ladies, people that go out and live with chimpanzees and monkeys and primates in nature. It can be any animal, okay, guys? But what's fascinating about that subject is it doesn't necessarily point to paranormal, sources. It could be just your ability to understand the body language of animals, understand the behavior to such a degree to where you can then understand them at that level and communicate at that level to them. Okay? That does not mean you're not going to become their food. So there's a fine line somewhere in there. And a lot of people believe that there is some type of empathic ability that people have with animals. So I wanted to incorporate that in there. Okay? So we will go to the next one called remote viewing. And this one's fascinating too because there's been governmental studies. I think his name was I can't his name eludes me for a second, but I'll jog my memory in a second. But remote viewing is the practice of seeking impressions about a distant or unseen target, reportedly using extrasensory perception or ESP or a sensing with the mind. Okay, so you can pretty much fly to your location, or just visually see any remote location that you would like. Of course, the government's going to be interested in this for espionage purposes. I think Yuri Keller, I think is his name. Let me make sure that's right. Yuri Keller. We're going to be remote viewing. I want to make sure I want to get that right because I watched a documentary. Yuri Geller. I had to look that up. So Yuri Geller is a guy who went, in front of, people in television and entertainment and said, hey, the government was trying to use my remote viewing ability to do espionage for the government. So I thought that was interesting. So if you have not heard about Yuri Geller, Google that and see what you can dig up about that. So I thought that was interesting. Number 4 is probably one of my favorites because I love Stephen King, right? Pyrokinesis. Pyrokinesis is the purported psychic ability allowing a person to create and control fire with the mind. There is no conclusive evidence that pyrokinesis is a real phenomena. Okay, but there's been cases of that they cannot explain, based on being there after the fact, seeing what happened. There could be some spontaneous combustion cases that might tie in to pyrokinesis, and I want to leave that open, for discussion. But whatever the case may be, it's still considered a part of the psychic phenomena. All right, clairvoyance. All right, a person who claims to have a supernatural ability to perceive events in the future or beyond normal sensory contact. So these are the fortune tellers. These are the people that do the tarot cards. These are the people who can see the future using psychic ability. Okay, so this is one of the most common psychic abilities that you will see in the paranormal realm. And in my opinion, this could be where fraud can seep in. Okay, because there's a lot of people out there that believe that they have some destiny or fate, or they have a faith in people with the ability to tell them what's coming up, because they may feel lost, they may feel desperate, they may, throughout history, people have been seeking out this type of service from people. Early on in my podcasting about the paranormal, I was very fascinated about the Witch of Endor in the Book of Samuel in the Bible, where um, what's his name? His name's eludes me now. Saul, Samuel's brother, I believe, goes and seeks out a witch in Endor to see if he's going to win this battle that he's about to partake in, and then Samuel manifests for them, and he seeks out somebody to do that. So from early on, people have been doing this, right? So from the texts of biblical sources all the way to tents and storefronts and cities, people are doing the clairvoyance thing. So we will be talking about that as well. And last but not least, number 6 is the medium, right? This is probably the one we'll discuss probably the most, and the one that we will talk about using in paranormal research the most. A person claiming to be in contact with the spirits of the dead to communicate between the dead and the living. Okay, so this is an interesting psychic ability that I like to test in the field. Okay, and there's several ways we'll talk about how we can do that, but we'll also talk about all these things. Okay, guys, can people do these things? Is there research that suggests, scientific research that suggests that these powers exist? Well, there is some, but they're obscure. Psychokinesis is probably one of the best tested things because it's a little bit easier to test than the other ones, and probably more common. 1959, Dean Radin and Robert Nelson at Pearl Laboratories did a dice rolling test. Okay, and they tried to see what statistical chances that psychics could guess the outcome of the six-sided die roll. And in their tests, they did come up with a 51% success rate. And that may not sound high, and that may sound by chance, but literally 51% is a 1 in trillion. I think they did like 235 different tests and different studies. So 1 in a trillion chance for someone to get a 51% success rate doing that. Okay, so what we understand with statistics is if you just take somebody off the street and say, okay, guess this number every time I make a dice roll, they're not supposed to get 51% based on their prior studies and random number generator studies. Okay, so that's interesting. But we'll talk about all of the studies that the government's done and how we're trying to objectively look at the psychic phenomena in the science realm, and then we'll talk about in the metaphysical realm. But before we do that, I'm sure you guys have some comments, which I'm hoping you do. So we'll go over to Jess and see if you guys do. So, what's it look like in the chat room? Is it crazy?
Christy, no.
Okay.
Christy actually had a question. Do you think only certain people are gifted with this, or do you think anyone can be a psychic?
Well, according to my research, it seems like everybody has some type of psychic ability that they may be able to develop. Animal empaths may definitely be one that I would think that anybody can, because everybody loves some type of animal. They love pets, they love the kittens, they love the dogs, they learn the body language, they learn the behavior, and they feel for them and they love them almost or pretty much like they're other people.
Sure.
So, absolutely, people can be empaths, not only with animals, but with the living, or humans rather. But other psychic abilities, I don't think everybody may have the affinity. Maybe some things are gifts, but I think in general, pretty much anybody can develop a psychic ability. Now, some people are born with the affinity to be, more skilled and more gifted, obviously, and we'll talk about them too.
Okay. Tony said he's had one experience with a person that gave him a remote viewing. He said it was unbelievable.
Did he elaborate on that at all? If he did not,
No, I was going to ask him
okay,
to.
try to not make it hard for Jess to read back the experience. But if it's too detailed, too complex, we won't worry about it. But that's awesome that Tony was able to experience something like that, because that's kind of hard to just randomly guess. I'm figuring it
Right.
is. So if it convinced Tony, Tony's a pretty level-headed guy from my experience with him. So that is interesting. Remote viewing's been tested by the government for sure. So there is something to it, obviously. Yeah. Anything
And
else?
no, that's about it. Bill Davis lives with a cat lady. But that's
Awesome.
about it. Matt's watching.
Yeah, I see Brad Streets and Matt probably going
Okay.
back and forth. Derek's giving Matt all kinds of hell, obviously. Thanks for joining
Right.
us, Brad and Matt. Hopefully you have
Yes.
something serious to contribute here at some point in the show. If not, then just be your adolescent selves if that's what makes you happy. So I'll come back to you, Jess,
Sounds good.
as we get into it here. Okay. So, is the psychic phenomena real? As someone asked me that, and I would have to say yes, but to what degree and what success rate psychics have is the good question. I do believe that our perception extends past the five senses that we know about. My research in the pineal gland suggests that. Not only its research in life after death and the release of DMT, but my experience in life suggests that yes, the psychic ability exists, mainly stemming from my mother. Okay, you guys probably have heard me talk about her at least once on my show, but she has done things to prove to me that the phenomena exists, and how it exists, I still don't know. There is just speculation and theory, and she will even tell you she does not completely understand the source of the information. Okay? She just knows that she does it and she trusts it, and that's fascinating to me. But what is even more fascinating is the scientific application and the objective look into the psychic phenomena with the things like the tests with the PK and the remote viewing and other phenomena. So, how can we actually test the psychic ability and the paranormal work that we do? So, if I'm investigating a haunting where I believe that the haunting deals with deceased humans or something to that effect, we're going to be talking with empaths and mediums to do that. So, one of my favorite things to do is do double blind experiments. Okay. And what I like about double blind experiences, anybody can, you know, do it. I can step in, do a walkthrough, not have any information from the client. Say you're doing a residential case, you just go in and say, hey, we're just going to do blind walkthroughs without talking to you or anybody else in the group. Somebody's going to film me. and document me walking through this house and trying to pick up on things or seeing if anything comes to me or if I have any experiences while I would do the walkthrough. So we'll do that with everybody, including the psychics, the sensitives, the empaths, everybody. Okay? And the reason I do that is I want to know what everybody picks up on different, what everybody picks up on that's the same or similar, and throughout the house, I want to know the frequency that, they pick up on it compared to how the client experiences it. Okay, so you can derive a lot of data from that, in my opinion. You can keep doing this at locations everywhere you go, and as long as you control how much information you know previously about a location, the better the results and the data will be. But that's the hardest part. You have to kind of stop people from taking a look at the history and research in the places. You just have to blind yourself to everything if you really want to do good research. So the control factor in those experience and that data can be troubling. But I don't want that to deter you or myself from doing that. So if you are interested in doing that type of research, I advocate it because if you're like me and you're open to the ability and believe that there's some type of psychic phenomena happening, we need to understand it more. Okay, so I don't have the money to hook up, medical gadgets to the brain and the body to do that type of research, but I can get anecdotal evidence to help drive that type of research. And doing the double blind experiments is really, really cool. So if you get something that a medium or a psychic picks up on that correlates with what the client reports, that is interesting to me. So those are the two main things we'll be talking about on the show. I want you guys to be, you know, bringing me your experiences in short, if you can, in the comments with psychics, any type of psychic phenomena. Do you believe in it? Do you not believe in it? What is your experience with it? Because this is probably what skeptics can't stand the most. They can't stand the psychic phenomena. They only see the charlatans. They only see the fraudulent people out there that are tainting and destroying the paranormal field with their lies and their deceit. Okay, let's face it. One person ruins it for everybody, but unfortunately, it's not just one person. Okay, psychics are busted all the time. All these skeptics are out there trying to pick these people apart, and for good reason. They should be doing this. So if you have an encounter with a psychic, investigate them. Ask them politely and with respect if you can investigate them. Try to explore what their abilities are and test them without fear of judgment. Because what I have found with legitimate psychics is they can't stand the expectation that they're held up to. Okay? 51% accuracy rate is insanely good. But if they can't, be 51% accurate, the fear of failure and the overall expectancy for them to do that will deter them from even wanting to be involved in paranormal research or be open to the public or to their peers that they even have such abilities. Okay, so one little tip I'll give you is if you don't want to deter these people to impact your research, please be respectful and be open-minded, yet skeptical to the point where you will want to take an objective look. Okay, don't always shoot down psychics. Try to have an open mind. Just be a good investigator when doing it. So we'll go back to the comments again real quick and see how Jess is doing. Anything else that looks like we should address yet?
Yeah, Brad Street said he thinks it's overplayed, to be honest. I am very skeptic when it comes to them. Missy says she's been involved in one of your double-blind experiments.
Right.
I said, I do think it exists, but not many people who claim. It seems like every female in the field is a psychic, and every guy can talk to demons. I think the only way to legitimize a psychic is to walk them through a neutral, unknown spot, compare each other after everyone has been through separately.
And whose comment was that?
Brad Streets.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. That's what we're talking about. It's the double blind experiment. That's the best way I know, and I know that there's different variations. And people have really good ideas, but I think that it just should be researched. I know the government's done it. I know there's been private people that's investigated and researched different various types of psychic phenomena. But what anything else before I start?
No, nothing that I
Okay.
see.
All
So if you
right.
want to.
All right. So what is crazy is sometimes when you try to understand what people are picking up on, it can be complex. Okay, guys? People can be intuitive. All right? They can read body language. They can do a cold read without knowing it. Okay, so if you're not familiar what cold reading is actually a clever way to in a tricky way ask questions or throw out you know little hooks like little fishing lures to try to see if you can fish out information from the person you're reading to build off of your reading, if that makes sense. So a good example is the Edwards guy. Okay, what's his name? John Edwards, is that right? Let's look, make sure I'm right before I continue. Yeah, John Edwards. Nope. We'll go Edwards Psychic. That's a better search, right? Yeah, John Edward, not Edwards. So I watched the show back in the day, okay? And that's probably the best example of cold reading I saw. Like he would have a group of people in his studio and he would kind of look around and be like, "Okay, somewhere over here I'm getting a letter E." Okay, so there's the first thing he throws out. So somebody in the vicinity that he's pointing out, which is probably like a dozen people, give or take, may have somebody that's passed or has a name of a family member that starts with the letter E. Okay, so a good cold reader would be like, okay, if someone raises their hand or if he starts reading the body language of someone as he's throwing out these letters, okay, it's a man, it's an older man. It's one of those little things are going to fit somebody that's thinking of all this stuff, and they may raise their hand or they may show a sign that they may think that you're speaking about somebody. And if it doesn't matter if they're alive, it doesn't matter if they're dead. So if you find out if they're alive through your questioning, your clever questioning, you can kind of tie in that alive person with someone who has passed. Okay, if you follow me, okay, and if they end up being dead, that's even better because now you're in contact with them. So if you want a good example of what cold reading is, haven't watched John Edwards' show, watch that. That's an example. But we want to talk about things that aren't cold reading. So things that you can that first thing a legit psychic will do will not ask you a question. They will tell you what they see, and usually they are very adamant about it and they trust it. Okay, so they won't ask you questions like, I think I see, a tall man with long hair. Do you have a tall man with long hair? Does that have anything to do with you? If they start asking you that, that's a big red flag. But if they start saying vague things like people who want to find missing people or try to help solve murder mysteries, okay, that's a part of psychic phenomena that drives me nuts. No matter what anybody says, there's been no psychic out there that's helped find a dead body. If that's true, it would be the most profound discovery in the psychic community, but that's not happened. Now, there's people that claim that they have. They say that the body's around water, that there's trees. Okay, that's the two main things that they like to say. Okay, they might say chain link fence. They might say vague things that might happen to involve where the body's found, but none of them that actually say, the body's over here. Walk over there, drive over there, point to the spot, tell them to dig there, or tell them to look there and find it. Nowhere in my research has that happened. I would love to find where that has happened and good documented proof of it. Now, a lot of people say that cops won't admit that they work with psychics. That may be true, but cops have to be very desperate to work with psychics, okay, in general. But with that being said, why is the psychic phenomena seem fleeting? Why isn't it an exact science? Well, the answer to that may be because how the psychic taps in to knowing, like a medium, for example, it may be something very complex and it may not be something that you can tie down easily. Okay. You may have to draw information from several sources that you may not be aware of, all of them or any of them. Okay. You may have to have certain things and tools that you use that kind of, trick your brain into this certain type of mode of thinking. You may rely on friends and family being near or somebody that's involved with your reading being there. Okay. There's a lot of factors involved, but the expectation is so high because of the skepticism. Okay. Either you know everything there is to know or you don't. Either you're psychic or you're not. Okay. So I suggest that that's probably the wrong way to go about it, with my experience. Because a lot of psychics, they have ideas and beliefs about why and how they have these abilities, but most of them are really unsure. Okay, they just know that they know the things that they shouldn't know. Okay, society and culture has attacked these people. They have impeded them, suppressed them, called them liars, called them frauds. They hide. Okay, and there's a community in the paranormal that they can flourish. But when us scientific paranormal people come in, we like to, poke our prodding fingers and be like, okay, we need to test you and doing this. A lot of them don't want to have anything to do with that because of the expectation is so high. So, what we need to do is try to change our approach and try to change the general perception we have and the skepticism that we have against that type of phenomena. Okay, now the stuff like the fire starters, either that could be the same thing. Okay, there could be some weird, strange coincidence that you started a fire with, in a way that's not known by science, or there may be some weird factors involved. Okay, same thing with all the phenomena. You just really have to look at what data is available for each incident and just break it down and be objective on how you observe it. My favorite ones are spontaneous combustion ones. Those are really interesting to dig into. I know a quick story. My mother's house, when she moved out and her mother and sister moved out and they sold the farm, there was a mysterious fire in the attic. Now, they played with spirit children in the attic. A whole slew of things happened at the farm. It was a couple 100 years old. So after they moved, fire started in the attic, house burnt to the ground. They have no idea why. So another house that we lived in Hillsboro, after we moved out of it and my father moved out of it, it ended up being demolished because it got dilapidated. So that's coincidental. But what's even weirder is another house that my mother rented and then moved out at. Later, that house caught on fire and they did not know why it caught on fire and it burnt to the ground. So things like that kind of confuse me. Like, if this keeps happening to her everywhere she goes, you start to begin to wonder what's going on with that. So let's go back to Jess. Jess, do we have anybody asking any questions yet or any experiences?
Yeah, Missy actually said, so a shaman is all those things?
A shaman is a spiritual leader. Um, It depends on what culture and tribe we're talking about. Native Americans really don't call them shamans, but recently they have been referred to as shamans, but they're kind of like crossover terms from Native American beliefs to other tribal and ancient cultures. Um, Shamans use holistic medicines, and they use psychic power and energy healing sometimes. They use magic. So some of it is, some of it isn't.
Okay. Derek asks, is it a possibility that since people with abilities can close off to certain things, when need be that people who don't know they have abilities can close off completely and never open up their potential? And why is that?
Well, we're dealing with the mind. So the mind, if you believe that you can't do something, chances are you will never do it. And that goes for everything. If you never believe that you can ride a bike, you probably aren't going to ride that bike. If you struggle at it and you believe that since you struggle at it you can't do it, probably not going to do it. But if you struggle at it and you're stubborn enough to say I will do it and I'll keep trying until I do, eventually you will learn. So that might be a very generic analogy for that, but since the psychic ability seems to be a spectrum of things that people are capable of doing, there is a gray area of what one person can do versus the other. And some psychics can do multitudes and different combinations of the different subsets that we talked about. Okay, so it's not just you're either a clairvoyant or you're a medium or you're a fire starter. You know what I'm saying? So you can block it based on what you tell yourself. So your psychological standpoint can inhibit or impede an ability if it exists.
Okay. Tony asks, do you think mediums and psychics operate on a different frequency?
Okay, a frequency. It's possible that their conscious state, is in a different frequency. That is possible, but pretty easy to test. So if you hook them up to medical devices that measure your brain waves and have them do their psychic work, you should be able to detect if their brain waves change from the different alpha and beta and gamma signals. So that is possible, and I do speculate on that. The dream state, you definitely change, what brain waves are happening in your mind. So who knows? I think it's a big possibility. Now, a lot of metaphysicists, before we go on, talk about vibration and their ability to vibrate at higher levels or lower levels. So physics says that energy vibrates at a lower level to in order for matter to exist. So you can kind of get new agey with that, but a lot of metaphysicists believe that some aspect of themselves, whether it be their conscious state or their physical state, vibrate at different frequencies. So when I take a look at when people say that, I would like them to be specific on what they're vibrating, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, he wanted to know, do you know if it has been done about hooking them up to see if it's different
Well, that's a
frequency
good
or not?
question because I'm having a paranormal investigator that's a paramedic and uses paranormal or medical equipment to investigate the paranormal. So that would be a good question for Chris Balasone tomorrow night on Necromancer. So Tony, watch Necromancer tomorrow night. We'll ask Chris that. I do not know. It's worth a Google search. It's worth looking into. I would be really surprised if somebody hasn't tried it. I just don't know about it.
Sure. But that's it for now.
Oh, come on, folks. We got more of that. They're probably just talking to each other in chat, but thanks. I'll get back to
Yeah,
you.
sure.
So, I mean, we can talk about my mother. Okay? I don't want to make the show about my mother, but she's the best example of a psychic with quotation marks around it. It's hard to label people with abilities. The people who with legit abilities really don't like to be labeled. because for one, it kind of pins the expectation onto them, and two, it it tries to make some type of judgment call on what it is. And like I said before, a lot of psychics and people with psychic abilities really see it as a very gray explanation for what they can do and why they do it. They just know that they were born with the gift, and some people actually say they develop psychic ability after certain events, which is interesting to me. Um, let's talk about the mother that had the wreck and their child gets trapped in the car, and all of a sudden they have superhuman strength and rip the car door off the car, lift the car up with superhuman strength. I mean, to me, that can be considered a psychic ability, in some sense. Okay, any type of superhuman power could be considered some type of paranormal event that could fall under this, category, this topic. So the rabbit hole can get deep, but the source of all these things has to be in the mind. The consciousness in a metaphysical way of thinking exists outside of the human. Okay, it's found in nature. It's found in a higher power. It's found all around us. Psychics and metaphysicists believe that consciousness permeates everything, almost like the Force in Star Wars. Okay, so it's almost like an external sensory and ability to pull from the environment the power to use the ability. Okay, so pyrokinesis is a cool example of that. You can actually start fires with your mind. Okay, a little bit more subtle way is remote viewing. Okay, how does that work? All right, how are you able to optically see something a place you've never been? Okay, how is that possible? Well, astral travel, okay, outer body travel. Okay, when a lot of people pass and have near death experiences, they report the outer body experience. They report being able to perceive without their body, without their eyes, and out their brains. So, does the human body and the mind have the ability to do that at will while they're living? Okay, that's the question you have to ask. So, that's the only way that type of thing can be possible. So, if these things exist, what we want to do is try to find ways to objectively study it, set up experiments, because the paranormal field is lacking in the experimental processes of dealing with and understanding and testing all these paranormal things. The psychic ability is one of them. But we can talk about mediums for a moment before the show winds down. We got about 15 minutes. Okay, folks. The ability to speak to the dead is something that everybody, whether you believe it or not, can find value in. Because I have not met a person on this earth that has not wanted to speak to somebody who is no longer here. Okay? And the brain struggles to cope with the idea that death is final. Okay? It does not comprehend, it does not understand how that is possible. So therefore, it has to exist and transcend rather the physical aspect of the body. Okay? So, the soul, for lack of a better term, is believed by everybody, and even by skeptics in foxholes. Okay, they say that what's the term? There's no what's it when you don't believe on anything? You're agnostics, or there's no I don't know the term, but if what's the term? Someone say in the comment. I know Tony knows it. There's no atheists in foxholes. Is that what it is? Let me look that up. No atheists in foxholes. Okay, there are no atheists in foxholes. The statement "there are no atheists in foxholes" is an aphorism used to argue that in times of extreme stress or fear, such as during war, all people will believe in or hope for a higher power, and there are therefore no atheists. Okay, there we go. Let's talk about that. The human mind, the human brain is wired to believe it whether you are skeptical or you don't believe it in it at all. Okay? If you're faced with immediate death or knowing your immediate death, your brain will kick into like, oh, you know, is there an afterlife? I'm about to die. All the things I've done that's shitty. What am I going to do about it now? All the near death experiences that we read about suggest that knowing this information right before you could possibly die causes a flashback of all your life experiences within a very small, finite amount of time. Okay, like it flashes them before your eyes. Everything that you've done, all the people you love, all the things that you've done wrong, all the things that you've done right, you will do a self evaluation. And a lot of times in the anecdotal reports that you read about. Okay, so the human brain is designed to do it. Okay, if you are able to die without being worried about the afterlife, I would like to sit down and talk with you because that is bizarre. But with this being said, the belief in it is so profound that is part of each and every one of us. Okay, so we have to pursue what that means to us independently and as a whole, as a culture, as a person. Okay, so I have met people who have said things about people who have passed recently or been long dead that I don't understand how they know about, my mother being one of them. Okay, I grew up with this woman. She has told me things about places. I'll tell her I'm going to take you to this other state. I'm not telling you where I'm going to take you, and you're going to tell me about these things. And when she gets there, she tells me about these things, and she's right on, and I have no idea how she knows. She tells me things about these people that has passed. She has no idea who they are. She knows nothing. Okay, so she knows names. She knows things about them. I can hand her a photo. She can tell me things about their life, their personality, what has happened, maybe to cause their death or right before. Okay, I study these things. If anybody that's listening to the show believe that they have this ability and are close to the Southern Ohio Valley, please get with me because I need to understand how this works to the best of my ability. And it's probably the most interesting mystery to our culture and our existence as humans, as mortals in this plane of existence, to know, is there an afterlife? Can people speak to, people are no longer here? You know, Jess, I've spoke to you about this. If you're willing to share your personal, experiences, maybe if you would like for a brief moment, what do you think about people with the ability to contact or have some sort of connection with those that are no longer? What do you think?
Um, I wouldn't say I was never, I was a skeptic, but when at the time my 12-year-old daughter is telling me things about my grandparents, that I had to actually call my mother up and had her on speakerphone because I couldn't answer the questions that she was asking. Not that she was asking, but confirm, say yes or no. And then when my mother was, agreeing with everything, I mean, there was stuff that my daughter was actually coming across and saying that my mom actually forgot about them. And I didn't know it. So I knew it wasn't any information that it was, that my daughter has heard from anybody. Because nobody, there was a lot of stuff that I didn't know that my daughter was coming up and saying. So that to me, it was pretty much like, well, I'm living it now, So I mean, and she's always had, growing up, she's always had a little bit, and I never, like I've talked to you about, I never steered her, away from it. I've just, oh, okay. But I mean, ever since then, she was able to do that with my grandparents. I mean, that was amazing. That made me feel good.
And what's interesting about that is, you have to ask questions. Is those things or information embedded in DNA? Can you pass that along your genetic, your genes to, your kids? Or is it like past life sensory? Can,
Hmm.
you know, maybe the people who have passed, their souls are part of, the spiritual energy of your child, or the children that report that they have memories of past lives. I mean, those, you know stories that you hear, and there's thousands of them, are so
Sure.
intriguing and so fascinating. And you have to have this inkling or this drive to want to know more and try to understand. And I know you've picked my brain about it. And the only way to know is to try, like you said, to bring your child up in an environment and not look at it as taboo, not judge them,
Right.
try not to make them feel like they're crazy or different.
Hmm.
So our culture is really good about doing that to people. And that could be a major problem. That may be one of the most um, prominent problems with figuring out the whole psychic phenomena, eh, you know, to this day.
Sure.
So incubating the possibility that your child or someone in your family, your friend, parent has this ability is important, but you don't want to fuel some delusion. You just want to say, "Hey, look, it's possible. What you're reporting is fascinating and could potentially mean that you're picking up something that you normally shouldn't be able to. We're going to label it paranormal for now, but we may find out that this is completely normal. There may be some kind of lost ability or some unknown sensory that people have to do these things. It could be relatives reaching out to to your children because maybe they're not programmed and conditioned to think that they can't or it's not possible. Maybe that opens them up to communicating with spiritual energies. I mean, you have to consider that. A lot of people
Right.
believe that children report seeing things like that. They're more sensitive to things like that. So let's sum up this show by saying that the mind is the contributing factor to all of this, folks. So, anything in the comments before I close out this show that we can, address or end on before summing up?
Christy asked, "Do you think you have a psychic abilities like your mother?"
It's possible. Derek and Missy have asked me to do some readings in places, and according to that person, it freaked them out.
Right.
I have no control over the accuracy of it. But I do know that you have to focus quite a bit. I'm running cameras all the time. I'm leading investigations, planning, doing all these crazy logistics to all the investigations I do. So my ability to do that is very bad in those situations. But when I don't have to do that, I do try to see if I do, because I would love to know I can just contact, or if anybody comes to me in the family that's passed, I would want to talk to them. My father, for example, she claims that she has conversations with my father all the time. I would love to be
Mhm.
able to do that and know that that's something that I can do.
Okay. I have another question. Do you think people can be sensitive without knowing the sensitivities?
Yes, anybody can be anything without knowing.
Okay. Derek asks, "So if we actually live in a non-existent world based on frequency and everything we know is an illusion, then is it possible for the psychic phenomena to be ourselves reciting past and future facts from other lives we lived?"
Yes.
Okay. It looks like it's it.
All right, guys. Well, Jess, you can hang out in the video call if you want, but I will go to the main screen and sum this show up. Thanks for your help once again.
No
You
problem.
did great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, guys. I'm glad that you tuned into this show. Hopefully, we got to some subject matter that interests you. Hopefully, me and Jess got to your comments and your questions, and we had an interesting conversation. The psychic phenomenon needs to be explored, okay? We should not immediately close out the possibility that exists. All of us at some point have observed something that we can't possibly completely explain away all the time. Paranormal phenomena does happen, okay? Doesn't mean that it is what it is. We just don't know, but seemingly it does. So with that being said, keep an open mind, stay objective, try to discover answers by the methodologies you use to know things, okay? Science is good, but it does not measure and explain all. All right? Thank you guys. We'll go over to the Patreon page. We are getting more patrons, okay? I believe Matt Benton said that he renewed his pledge. See if I got notification of that. If we did, I will call him out in the show. If not, Matt, I didn't receive an email yet. I got a lot of notifications, but Christy Brown, Scott Stewart, Clay Borman, Matthew Jackson, R.J. Murphy, Liz Coy. Okay, they have been around. Some of these names has been with me years. Some of them are new. Okay, what we're doing in the paranormal field extends beyond this show. It goes out into the field. It travels to distant places with mysteries and phenomena that people don't know about and want to know more, specifically us. But we develop things that are expensive to test things using science. We do things that are straining our financial situation drastically. So if you would love to support us and see this content, the live streams, the investigations, the video productions, everything that we do, if you want to see them continue like they are and grow, consider supporting us on Patreon. $1 a month will do a lot. If everybody that watched and followed and subscribed did that, we would be doing very well. And we would be doing our best. But consider doing that. But by watching and sharing this show, you are doing a lot. So without the names on this screen, this show and our paranormal work would not be possible. Thank you, everyone that watches the show every week, or maybe the ones that come in and join us and tune in new. Thank you very much. You are in my heart each and every day. I think about you guys all the time. I love you very much, and I care deeply about everyone that shows interest or wants to get to know me and my work. Okay? Check my work out and my paranormal research team at interfacedeath.net. And subscribe to the mailing list. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out on every social media platform there is. We are out there. Check out the links in the description. Okay, guys? I'm going to leave it there. We'll see you guys on Necromancer tomorrow night at 8 p.m. on our YouTube channel. We have somebody in the medical field that investigates the paranormal. Check out that. People, I know Tony asked about some questions about that, so check that out as well, guys. I'll see you tonight, or tomorrow night rather, and maybe next week, next Tuesday, we'll have another topic. Make sure to go to the blog page to find out what topics we can vote on. Okay, guys, stick around for the video promotions. As always, take care. We'll see you next time.